113 participants this morning. I'm sure that'll tick up a little bit as we move forward. Thank you all for signing on and getting here early so we can start on time. Please remember to make sure that your name displayed on your screen is the same name that you registered under. It does help us when we are taking attendance. And also please make sure that your mic is muted if you're not talking. Today, we're going to jump right into team introductions. Then Elise will present the data collections and evaluation responsibilities. I will then take over and talk about administrative responsibilities, and then it'll be the end of the day and we'll have a question and answer period. So thank you all again for being here. I want to congratulate you all again for being awarded the funding. So I'm going to give it one more minute because it looks like there's 2 more people sitting in the waiting room, and then we'll jump into the grantee presentations. Just so I don't catch anybody off guard, City of Greenfield, you're going to go first. So if you want to get prepared.
Tell me when to go. I'm ready. I'm
all right.
Coffee and everything.
Take over.
Okay, very good. Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Wood. I'm the city manager for the City of Greenfield and the project director. Along with me, hopefully today, are Ann Rathbun, our city clerk, who's handling the finance portion, and our police chief, Greg Allen, who's our program manager. Greenfield is located in South Monterey County, very close, about 10 miles away from the city of King City, who did their presentation yesterday. We have a very similar demographic, and they're also partners with us with our CBO in this program. Our population is around 17,000 people, 92% Hispanic, and that includes between 7,000 and 10,000 population of indigenous peoples, Oaxacans mostly. 85% of our population speaks languages other than English, mostly Spanish, obviously, but also Triqui, Mixteco, and Zapoteco. Monterey County is home to around $400 billion of agricultural industries, yet about 25% of our population lives below the poverty line. Monterey County Health Department has identified South Monterey County as having the most challenging social indicators that contribute to higher unemployment than average, severe overcrowding, AKA housing shortage. I'm sure everybody understands that one. Higher levels of children participating in free lunch programs, and unfortunately higher truancy for our youth. And as you know, studies have shown that for these high-risk youth, strong partnerships with educational institutions is imperative. Our Road to Success Plus program that is also being run in King City is one of those partnerships. It's administered by the Sun Street Centers. Anna Folia and Denise Velasquez are both on this call. Thank you, ladies. It's a youth diversion and interventions program that we've been involved with for the past couple of years. It's been very effective, and it's we're looking very much forward to its expansion and continuation. The goal of the program is to effectively divert these high-risk youth away from further penetrating the youth justice system. So with that, if I know Anna talked yesterday, Anna, if you missed anything that you didn't say yesterday, I invite you to chime in, or Denise as well. And so thank you very, very much.
I would just add that there's a high marijuana business in Greenfield, which definitely affects the population as well. So I think our youth are living in low to poverty income and have lack of access to services, but yet there's a big business for marijuana in Greenfield too. So there's just a lot of things going on there. And I don't know if Denise wants to add anything that I missed yesterday. She's our program manager.
I think you guys pretty much covered it all. I think the only thing in terms of the CalVIP grant that I just would like to acknowledge is that in 2015, our area, our region was awarded the CalGRIP grant, which lasted us 2 years. And after that, the program, at that point, we were only doing first-time offenders for youth. And so we were providing all those services that were mentioned yesterday, as well as parenting classes. And we've got such a good positive feedback from the community that every city in the region was willing to try to keep it moving along. But now we're kind of in a situation, as we all know, that every city is struggling. And so it was amazing that we qualified, 2 of our cities qualified for the grant. And with this new CalVIP grant, we're able to expand it beyond just the first-time offenders. So now we're working with youth who are already at juvenile hall or are already on probation, as well as with the school districts. And the school districts, even during this time, are able to identify youth who are in need of support. And so we're able to provide that wraparound service and link them to all the other services in the area, which is amazing because we have a big need for a lot of services. And so it's really cool to be a part of that. So I think it's great. And I just want to acknowledge everybody here for having been awarded that, and also to CalGRIP for allowing us to reach out to more youth and families who are in need in our region. So thank you.
Thank you all. Next will be Catholic Charities. Is there somebody from Catholic Charities that can share a little bit about your team and introduce your team and tell a little bit about your project?
Hi, good morning. There's gonna be a couple of us on, I think. So my name is Jordan Thompson. I'm the Director of Mental Health at Catholic Charities. We're previous CalVIP grantees, but this is going to be a sort of a shift in focus for us. So we're really excited to be continuing with the work and being part of this. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about who our team is, and then Leo is gonna take over and tell you a little bit about our project. So with me, so I oversee the department in which this work sits. And generally it's the mental health and violence prevention department. So we do school-based mental health services, violence intervention services for families who've been impacted by family violence or by homicide. And we're based in the East Bay area, in Oakland and Richmond and Concord also. And with us also, we have our Chief Financial Officer, Elaine Zane Clark, who's the financial person. And we also have our day-to-day finance contact, Vivian Nguyen. And then finally with us is Leo Guzman, who is going to be the overseeing the project, running the project. And Leo, if you're here, I'll pass it on to you now.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So what we've done in the past year, we run a program called True Academy, and it's a CBT, restorative practice combination group that we've partnered up with Camp Sweeney. So it's a juvenile detention center up here in San Leandro. And we've been working with the young men. We've been running a group, and it's been a pretty big success. It's kind of unique where the camp actually takes the boys from the camp and brings them off site to our group, and they're able to, work with us. And what we've done also is we built a partnership with another agency up here that does career development work. So one of the big pieces that I think the camp really benefits from, and the young men, is that we're able to certify them through our program that they've completed our CBT piece and can prove documentation to the courts. And also they get certification through the career development program. So they really can show their progress, and it really supports them. So it's been working really well. What we're really happy and I'm grateful with this grant, the BSCC grant, is that now we'll be able to hire 2 case managers and a clinician that will be able to support ongoing services for the young men when they get released into the community, which I think is vital. It was really evident this summer. We had one of our graduates who was tragically murdered And I thought that, we had a little more support in the community, we could have really helped them. So I'm really grateful. And I think this would be just a tremendous asset for us to keep going. And like Jordan said, we also been working with the schools in Richmond and Oakland. And we'll be able to provide these case management services also to the young people that are on probation or at risk for violence in the schools, and really support them with this academy, with groups and individual work. So we see a lot of potential, and I think it's just a really big missing piece that's really going to just bring everything together. So thank you.
Thank you so much. The City of Parlier.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chief Jose Garza from the City of Parlier. I would start off by introducing some of our team members, who I believe they're on Zoom. My city manager, Sonia Ha, who is also the project administrator, and her assistant, Eva Beltran. I also have Sergeant Dan Barcelos, who handles the day-to-day operations and the coordination of the grant. A little about City of Parlier. We're located in the Central Valley, about 16,000 in population, 98% Hispanic. Our community is made up of a large Spanish-speaking Hispanic farm labor community that we have here. We are very thankful with the second round of funding from CalVIP. We were able to keep our violence prevention officer who handles violent crime, but now the officer will also be focusing on the domestic violence along with sexual assaults. We are also able to keep some of our partners and added new partners, which was great, to fill in some of the gaps of services that we realized that we needed on the first CalVIP. Partners such as Hope Coalition, led by Pastor Mike De Juarez. He will continue assisting us with the crisis interventionist who responds to the gang violence that we're having in our community. We did have 2 gang homicides this year. So that's a great help. Along with, he handles the mentoring programs at the schools. Some of the mentoring programs, of course, is on virtual right now, but hopefully in the future, the kids will be back at school. We have 4 new partners to assist us, such as Centro La Familia and Breaking the Chains. Breaking Chains is assists us with the human trafficking. They're out of City of Fresno. They have the program there, working with the investigators and all the different resources. They realized, and we realized, that we needed that program here in the City of Parlier because of the large labor camps that we have, and also the human trafficking that's going on in some of those labor camps and among our community. So we are in the process of setting up a satellite here in the City of Parlier, and that's going to be great. We'll also be Breaking Chains and having their satellite, their advocate, Deborah Rush and Yolanda King, will be able to assist not only our city, but also our surrounding communities, Sanger, Reedley, Selma, Fowler, assist them with also issues of human trafficking. I just want to mention one success as we're preparing Breaking the Chains to have a satellite here. We just recently had a 15-year-old first-time runaway. You can imagine the parents all paranoid because their child was gone at 3 o'clock in the morning. It took us a day. Officers worked through to find this child, 15-year-old, at a hotel, at a casino in another county with a 53-year-old man. So, of course, she wasn't going to say anything, and the individual wasn't going to say anything. So we called Deborah Rush for Breaking the Chains. She met with the victim, took her to her teen center, started helping her, and we were able to get a really great statement, and we're pursuing some felony charges on the individual. It's a non-trafficking. However, a lot of at-risk runaways or first-time runaways that get involved, and then you have such a resource like Breaking the Chains to really help us in that problem, and also start the healing process among the victims. In building trust with the community, the PD will be using the principles of EPIC, engaging police and immigrant communities, which is going to be a big help. and helping those immigrants that are, we want to build that trust, but they fear deportation. So, this is one way utilizing those principles to help us in those investigations. So that's just kind of a nutshell of the whole, there's a lot more details, a lot more partners of it, but we're just very thankful for having the second round. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Kitchens for Good.
Hi there. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dennis Crosby. I am the Director of Programs for Kitchens for Good. We are excited to be a part of this CalVIP program. Organization's been in operation for about 5 years now. Actually, exactly 5 years. We just celebrated our anniversary last month. We provide apprenticeship programming for folks that have barriers to employment. So we provide a culinary arts apprenticeship. We have 3 different programs under our project launch department. The first is the culinary arts, which is the oldest of the programs. We just started a baking apprenticeship program and recently a food service managers program. And these programs are essentially 20-month apprenticeships. Folks come in for about 3 months. They spend time with us in class, in kitchens. They learn the very basic fundamentals of cooking. We teach them all about work readiness, how to not only get a job, but also retain a job. And then after they're done with us, we partner with employers, restaurants, and kitchens throughout San Diego. And they then finish their remaining 17 months of apprenticeship with those individuals. So our target population essentially is folks that have come out of incarceration, frequent jails and prisons. We also work with folks that have challenges with mental health, with addiction, and we work a lot with individuals that have come out of the foster care system recently. All of these factors can affect long-term employment. So our job is really to help get them to learn some very basic skills that can help catapult them into a long-term career. I'm working with our Director of Finance, Natalia Musa, who's on this call as well. And we are partnering with Dr. Kimberly Crass, with SDSU on this. And again, just excited to have the opportunity really to work with these folks, track their progress, and again, make sure that past behaviors stay in the past, that they've got opportunities really to learn some new skills and techniques to stay out of jail and prison, and then work toward a very prospering career.
Well, thank you so much for that. Next, so I guess I should have mentioned each day we'll have 11 grantees. There's 33 of you in total. So we had to break it up over the 3 days. So yesterday we had 11. Today we have an additional 11. So I apologize if I confused anybody in thinking that everybody was going to go again today. So today is just the next 11. So next will be the City of Long Beach.
So good morning. This is Ana Lopez. I'm the Community Impact Division Officer overseeing some of the violence prevention work in the City of Long Beach and our Strengthening Families program. And with me today is Adam Lara. He's our Violence Prevention Manager. He'll see the day-to-day operations for this grant. Dara Poe, who's our Fiscal Analyst. Mayra Rascon, who's our Interim Evaluator. We are in the process of doing an informal bid process to bring on board her officially, and she is with the Center for Latino Community Health, Evaluation and Leadership Training at Cal State Long Beach. And then we're soon to hire a program coordinator. So we're really excited to be here. And I have to say that yesterday, just listening to everyone's presentation, such a rich conversation, and it's really an honor to be here. A lot of learning taking place. A little bit about our project, our city, before I walk in here. The City of Long Beach is the second largest city in Los Angeles County. We have almost 500,000 residents that reside within our borders. We are, to give you an idea where we're located, we are just south of the city of LA, and we border Compton, City of Paramount, Lakewood, Wilmington, if folks are familiar with Southern California. Most of our population, we have a really diverse population, but 56% of our population is Latino, and they come from blended families and multi-generational family households. We have the largest Cambodian community outside of Cambodia as well. Our focus for our grant and our project is called the Long Beach Activating Safe Communities. The two primary goals of our project is really to create a coordinated response system to reduce gun violence in the city of Long Beach. In the process of developing this proposal and very early on through our violence prevention work, we realized that we're responding to gun-related violence, but not in a coordinated response system. And we are housed within the health department. I should have added that the city of Long Beach has we're one of 3 cities with our own local health jurisdiction. And this grant is actually housed within our health department. So we take a public health approach to violence prevention. And as part of that, we are using a collective impact model. So we're bringing together all the partners who typically would respond to gun violence and really putting a protocol in place and really creating a systems approach. And as part of that, we're integrating the interventionist model to work collaboratively with all of our agencies. So on this grant, we have our park department, development services, police department, health department, economic development, and then several community-based organizations, and also the local Cal State Long Beach. So the 2 goals is one, as I mentioned, is to create this coordinated response system. And then the second goal is really to activate a particular community. So we focused in on the Washington neighborhood, which is one of several areas in our city that's really impacted by gun violence. But we selected the Washington neighborhood because we've intensely been working there. But also because the data really show that that's an area where both the perpetrator and the victim are kind of residing. So we wanted to really see how do we work with all of our multiple partners to activate that community and really work with early youth intervention. And for this, I want to hand it over to Adam Lara, who could share a little bit more about the work that's happening right now. Adam?
Morning, everyone. Adam Lara here with the City of Long Beach. And just like Anna was sharing, I want to share a little more background on that. The sort of rationale reason why this sort of program model came to be has been through a lot of trust building, community engagement in the Washington neighborhood over several years. And in particular, sort of when COVID started, COVID-19, we were reaching out and trying to continue to connect with residents in the neighborhood and families. And sort of when the summer came and the uptick of violence started happening, and gun violence in particular in that specific neighborhood, and residents started reaching out to us, sending us emails with pictures and videos of just different pictures of the violence that was happening in the community. And so it's sort of since COVID started, we've been engaging with residents, and they've been elevating the need to address gun violence and support youth in the community. And so through that, we've had several conversations with different residents, with sort of what we call experts in the community, people who've been system involved, and victims of gun violence. We've been crafting what this model looks like, which was what we found out was that the city doesn't have a coordinated gun violence response system. Residents were telling us that they don't know what happens when their sons or a family member or a neighbor gets shot, who they can contact, and what is the protocol, what does the city do, and how does the city respond and support these families and victims. So that's really one aspect of this work. I think the other piece is how do we learn from this particular approach to collaborate and create these collaborations between cities, nonprofits, sort of public and private institutions, and working with residents in a way that really upholds and uplifts the voices of residents and what they want to see. and have residents provide sort of leadership and guidance in this work, so that we create a protocol that's really responsive to the needs of residents. The that's the other pieces with regards to activating the parks, or like creating programs and services and there's 2 parks in the Washington neighborhood. That's been also part of what we've been hearing in the community, that there's just been a lack of services, a lack of programs, and just some of it just due to the challenges of COVID-19, not being able to provide these types of in-person services and programs. And so that's one of the goals of this program, is to think creatively, innovatively, to how do we engage youth in particular, not just youth at risk, but also youth who are adjacent or not at, who are just don't have anything to do. And so need activities and need those types of resources in the park, so that they could go into after school or in the weekends, in the evenings. And so we're hoping that we're happy, excited with this opportunity to be able to, in partnership with the Parks Department and local nonprofit organizations, activate some of those resources and opportunities in the parks, and be able to engage hundreds of families with this grant. So, yeah. That's it on my end.
Well, thank you so much, and welcome to the CalVIP team. Safe passages. Is there anybody on the line from Advanced Peace, Safe Passages? Okay, how about the City of Sacramento? Oh,
Yeah, I'm here. My name is Khalid. Here we go. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
Good morning. Hopefully, let me get my, I thought we had, all right, there we go. Good morning, everybody. My name is Khalid Mutaki. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Advanced Peace, which is sponsored through Safe Passages. Safe Passages is a nonprofit that's based in Oakland, and is our fiscal sponsor, and we are a nonprofit that is trying to get my view here, that is based in several cities throughout the state and the country. Advanced Peace is an organization that is intentionally and exclusively focused on reducing gun violence, retaliatory gun violence in urban communities. It is grounded in the work that was developed through the City of Richmond's Office of Neighborhood Safety over a period of 10 years. And our aim as a nonprofit arm of that work, is to replicate and expand upon that work, that successful work that was done in the City of Richmond. So with that, I'll just say that the work of Advanced Peace is grounded in several evidence-based practices, including street outreach, mentoring, case management, life skills training, cognitive behavioral therapy, and subsidized employment. The target population for the Advanced Peace strategy is those individuals who are at the center of gun violence. They're often referred to sometimes as 1%ers, and we realize that the shooters and the victims are often the same person. We also realize that we don't call it a gang prevention program, because we realize and have come to understand that most gang members are not shooters, and oftentimes shooters are not gang members. So it's a program that's, once again, intentionally focused on engaging those individuals who find themselves at the center of gun violence, and partnering with them. When we talk about partners, we see our participants as partners, because what we've learned is you can't expect to reduce gun violence if you're not engaging those who are actually pulling the triggers. As I've heard my folks from Oakland say many times, and I know Peter and some other folks are on the call, those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. and that's what we believe. And the program is being evaluated by UC Berkeley School of Public Health. We are just in Richmond, in Stockton, sorry. In Stockton, we are just completing our second year there of replicating the best practices and lessons learned from the city of Richmond. The 2-year report will be coming out. This grant will allow us to expand that work in the city of Stockton. We're really appreciative of that. And we have 2 partners on this proposal. One of them is called the OWL Movement, which is a group of mothers who've been impacted by gun violence, who have lost loved ones to gun violence in the city of Stockton, who will be facilitating healing circles for our staff, for our participants, and also another organization called Native Directions, who has a program called Three Rivers, and will be conducting counseling and training for our staff. So I just want to say thank you to BSCC and CalVIP for this opportunity. And I also want to say thank you for recognizing, once the pandemic kicked in, that it was a good idea to expand the deadline. And I could imagine that probably created some extra work for BSCC staff, so I appreciate that. And just lastly, I just want to thank all the advocates that really stepped into this space to advocate for this funding. It was a tough challenge. It was something that turned out to be a lot harder than it probably should be. It was successful, and I know a lot of people on the call were engaged in that movement to advocate and apply pressure to our elected representatives to see the value in this work that we do. And want to thank everybody on the call for that grind, because it is not easy work and it's not made for everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you. The City of Sacramento.
Good morning. Nicole
morning.
Clavo here with the City of Sacramento Office of Violence Prevention. I am the project director for the CalVIP grant. I also have on the line Ginger Wiegraf, who's our financial officer. As well, we'll be adding one more person at the end of this week that will be handling our day-to-day program and will be the fiscal contact. Our project name is Youth Peacemaker Fellowship Project. In summary, our collaboration with Sierra Health Foundation, Advanced Peace Sacramento, Another Choice, Another Chance, and the Institute of Urban and Regional Development at UC Berkeley. The project aims to reduce gun violence by offering the highest risk gang-involved youth intensive case management and supportive services. Specifically, the project incorporates the 7 evidence-based approaches of assertive outreach, individualized life management action plans, intensive engagement, culturally responsive counseling and healing, transformational excursions, internships, and intergenerational mentoring. And so that's pretty much what we'll be doing in a nutshell. I'm quick and to the point.
Thank you. City of Oxnard.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Teresa Tejas. I am the program manager for the City of Oxnard. And today we have our team on here is our financial manager, Dahlia Campbell, and then we have the program development manager for DRAG, Daniel Escobar, on the line. So the City of Oxnard is expanding Operation Peaceworks, and we are doing peace through collaboration. It's a trauma-informed approach through collaborating with community partners, and we provide community outreach. We receive community partner referrals, provide leadership opportunities, And it is an expansion on what we are doing now. So we're expanding over with DRAG to increase the wraparound evidence-based support to 14 to 18-year-olds. It's a youth alternative to negative behaviors. The program will provide a positive environment in order to help participants complete their educational and emotional goals through healing opportunities in youth and family for youth and family. Daniel can talk a little bit about the way the program is, but through expanding with this part is we hope to service about 90 to 100 youth throughout the 3 years, and they will participate and get it's an after-school program, so each will receive about 60 hours of classroom instruction. Each will earn a industry certification once completing the program. Some will receive credit towards graduation if needed, and that'll all be assessed once Daniel sits with them and is able to see what it is that they'd like to achieve. Daniel, would you like to speak and talk about DRAG?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much. Can you hear me all?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. It's been so inspirational to hear everyone's roles in the state and individual communities. I think it's a wonderful way for all of us to get to know each other and all the good work that we do. So thank you again for this opportunity. As Teresa so nicely said it, we are DRAG. We started out as, that's DRAG with 2 Gs, Drag Racing Against Gangs and Graffiti. And we've kind of moved away from that acronym. I think a couple of people touched up on it about how gangs aren't necessarily the shooters and the shooters aren't necessarily gang members. We've kind of taken a different approach. We're no longer doing any sort of drag racing, but we do keep the automotive portion to our work. And students, high school students from Oxnard and Ventura County come to our facility after school, volunteer hours for them, but they do get credit toward graduation if they complete their minimum hours. Once they're here, we teach them the basics of automotives, and we bridge the gap between students, community, and law enforcement. So we have local law enforcement from the city of Oxnard and from surrounding cities come by and mentor our students, and we give them tips for safe driving, how to stay away from substances. And since the students have a vested interest in cars and getting their license at this age and being independent, we have some really cool project vehicles that we use that are kind of tricked out Mustangs to look a little bit more like police vehicles. And it kind of breaks that barrier so that the community and the law enforcement can have a conversation about this thing that they have a shared interest in. But we focus on the youth automotive program, career exploration. We do community engagement, and we show the students how important it is to be part of the community and to give back. We touch on a social emotional learning. We give scholarships to students, graduating students at the end of each year. We usually choose between 2 and 3 students and give them a scholarship to a school of their choice they're going to, no matter if it's a trade school or if it's a 4-year university. And then we also do the police mentorship. So we're really excited to be part of this program, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We're happy to have you. The city of San Francisco, you're up.
Good morning. My name is Tiffany Sutton. I'm the program director of this project. I have on the line Jeannie Chisholm, which is our day-to-day program coordinator. I also have Patrick Leong, which is our chief financial officer for San Francisco Police Department. And then I have Arturo Carrero, who is our community partner, and he's the director of the Street Violence Intervention Program. Our project in San Francisco is called Connect You, which is led by San Francisco Police Department. And within this project, we are servicing individuals between the ages of 18 to 30-year-olds who are identified as our highest risk of individuals involved in either gun violence or being victims of gun violence. And we are primarily focused in our Southeast District, which is District 10. Those are the individuals in which we will be servicing. And the goal of our project, there are three goals of our project. One is to reduce gun violence and homicides by firearm. Two is to reduce rearrest and victimization. And the third goal is to improve or increase community trust with those who are at the highest risk of either committing gun violence or being victims of gun violence. The project is a project that's based, it's a data-driven project in which SFPD will be working with our technical assistant, which is the California Partnership for Safe Communities. We will be working with that organization and helping us to identify through a data-driven analysis what are the characteristics of those in San Francisco that are at the highest risk of either committing gun violence or being involved in or being a victim. Once we identify those individuals through our data-driven process, which will be based on characteristics versus individuals, we will then try to connect with individuals who fall within those characteristics. And there we will connect and refer them to our community partner, which is the Street Violence Intervention Program, which is led by Arturo Pereira under the mayor's office as well. Once those individuals are connected with SVIP, which is the acronym, SVIP through a life coach model, through cognitive behavioral therapy, will then work intensely with those individuals to try to change the behavior, try to make sure that they don't get involved in those type of activities that may lead them to either being a perpetrator or victim of gun violence. They will work intensely with those individuals. And then thereafter, we will also work with those individuals as it relates to having focus groups and ways in which they can discuss with us how police department can better interact with our community and those who are either potential perpetrators or victims of gun violence. And so those are the three components of our project. We are also working with Northeastern University as our evaluator, California Partnership for Safe Community as our technical assistant. And I will turn it over to Arturo if he has anything additional that he'd like to add as our community partner.
Well, good morning, everybody. Yeah, so my name's Arturo, and I'm the director for the Street Violence Intervention Program. We've been around since 2013. The initiative has been going on since the 80s. It was born out of the Mission District and the Southeast, a program called Calles, which means the streets. And we had a program called RAP, Real Alternatives Program, and then the CRN, which is the Crisis Response Network. In 2013, Health Right 360 took over the contract and made it from individual neighborhoods to a citywide effort. We have 25 outreach workers that go into the hotspot neighborhoods throughout the city and engage with at-risk youth to violence. What we do is we street canvas, we do conflict mediation, safe passage, preventive education, community building events, intensive mentorship, and we support with sport activities throughout the city, football, basketball, things like that. We also support the Department of Public Health with crisis response. So if a shooting happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, the police will contact DPH. They'll send a counselor or therapist to either the crime scene and or the hospital over at the General Hospital at the trauma center, and they'll support the victim and the victim's immediate family. We come in as peripheral support to do rumor control, de-escalation, and just provide whatever support we can. And then we follow up with conflict mediation and whatnot. So that's kind of like a overarching of what we do. Our concentration here will be in the Southeast. We are culturally relevant. Our population is African American, Latino, and Pacific Islanders. So we will definitely keep our eyes on supporting culturally specific population. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you both so much. We have two left. Watts Gang Task Force Council, you're up next.
Great, thank you, Katrina, and thank you for this session. This is really wonderful hearing about everybody's projects. So I'm Deborah Riddle. I'm the sitting executive secretary to the Watts Gang Task Force Council Board. And I'm here to represent with a number of my colleagues, the One Watts initiative for Watts in Southeast Los Angeles. We have here from, this is a collaborative effort with the Watts Gang Task Force Council and HACLA. Representing the Watts Gang Task Force Council today, we have here Audria Pittman, Dr. Perry Crouch. For HACLA, which is the Housing Authority City of Los Angeles, we have John King, Jennifer Thomas, Patricia Kataura, Nithya Karuna Nayake, Pam Page, and if I've left anyone off, I'm sorry, chime in at the end, that would be great. So some background on Watts. Watts is a very dense population in Southeast Los Angeles. It comprises less than 2.2 square miles, population of just over 41,000 people, which makes it very dense, about a little over 17,000 people per square mile. It is 62% Latino, 37% African American, and there's another 1% of various races in Watts. Let's see, the percentage of households earning $20,000 or less is high. It's the highest for the County of Los Angeles. Watts is also the home to 4 large public housing developments. That's the highest concentration of public housing in Los Angeles. Nickerson Gardens is the largest public housing development west of the Mississippi, and the average annual income for these housing developments is $14,000. So the One Watts initiative is set up to counter violence with jobs. One Watts will lead gang-involved youth and adults in the Watts community away from the cycle of violence and into gainful employment. This initiative will also provide a systems-based gang intervention model that integrates hardcore gang intervention with high-level job training and placement for gang-related youth and adults, and individual and family support services will also be offered. Some of our program goals are to increase the employment potential for 150 gang-affiliated residents of Watts, and, to assist them in finding careers at sustainable wages through job training and placement. We'll also offer services to an additional 150 gang-affiliated residents already employed or connecting them to financial assistance. One of our major goals is to reduce violence between gangs and Watts by 20% below a 10-year average and target gang-involved or affiliated adults, ages 18 to 62. So in order to do that, we have some key program components. One of them is employment training and placement, work experience and job readiness. In order to do that, we offer case management, supportive services, and record expungement. Another key component is violence reduction and peace building activities. That's established through community engagement and peace roundtables. A third key component is group therapy and peer mentoring through fatherhood and motivated mothers groups, which will offer life skills training, anger management, and community peace building, among other offerings, and evaluation of all of these models through one of our partners at UCLA, Georgia Lee, who has a long history with Project Fatherhood. Our target population is the Watts area gang involved youth and adults, as I said before, 18 through 62. We will be offering community intervention specialist referrals, probation and parole, referrals from GRID, and California gang database referrals. Some of the agency roles, we're a big family. There are a lot of us working together, long time Watts organizations that are in collaboration to make this happen. One of them is the lead agency, the Watts Gang Task Force, who will oversee implementation and operate as the One Watts strategic manager. The Watts Gang Task Force will also provide gang intervention services, both to create peace and violence cessation among gangs and recruit them to the One Watts mission, the vision. The task force will also recruit and co-case manage 150 participants and co-facilitate men's and women's groups. Another collaboration partner is Children's Institute. I'm also a member of Children's Institute. Children's Institute will enroll eligible program participants into existing services and offer fatherhood support. The Housing Authority will provide organizational management and grant support. They will also lead the case management process for workforce development, job training, and placement. The Housing Authority will also co-enroll participants in Watts and Los Angeles Workforce Center to take advantage of workforce opportunities and other benefits and employment services. They'll also serve as a fiscal agent for the One Watts initiative. We're also working very closely with CSP, which is the Community Safety Partnership. That is the community policing model. It's kind of a model for the same across the country. We'll work with CSP officers to promote safety and community well-being. We'll work with an ambassador program that's been set up through the Community Safety Partnership to address neighborhood-specific issues. And they'll also work with us to provide crime data to help us structure the work that we do. We'll be partnering also with GRID. There'll be referrals of gang-involved residents. They'll be supporting coordination and communication with contracted providers, and they'll be providing data for reporting and analysis. So as you can see, we're one big family, bringing the vision and the mission of One Watts to our beloved Watts community. In fact, our model now is creating peace and increasing employment, and we're very, very excited to be a part of the CalVIP grant program and excited to partner with all of the rest of you to make things happen. So thank you. I don't know if there are any other team members that would like to throw in a word or two. If so, speak now.
No, Deborah, you did a great job. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, guys. Okay, and to conclude today's presentations, the City of Marysville, you have the floor.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, this is Brandon Messina. I'm the Youth Advocate Coordinator for Yuba County Office of Education. We wrote the grant and teamed with the City of Marysville and our CVOs, Victor Community Support Services. So we are first-time grant recipients for the CalVIP grant. So just to give you a little backstory of how this came to be, we have identified there's a lot of young people that are gang associated. We have a tracking system in our school system at Marysville Joint Unified School District where we identify kids that do gang rioting or things like that. And we have a list, but there's never been a formal tracking system just because of funding and program services. So we've never been able to provide an actual intervention or prevention to these kiddos. In the last year, unfortunately, we have had 4 teenage shootings. 2 youth were shot and wounded. So that really kind of sparked a need to really get something going to find some funding for these services. In the last year, we partnered on a different grant, but with our partners, Victor Community Support Services, to transition our kids out of our local juvenile hall. And the results have been amazing. And it's really, our recidivism rates are going lower and all those kind of great things. So we kept them in the loop as a partners because, they're awesome at what they do. So this program that we did, it's two different programs. The first one is just a framework. It's evidence-based through the OJJVP. And really it just outlines community mobilization, opportunity provision, social intervention, suppression, and organizational change. Really, the purpose of this is not to just provide the intervention for the youth, but it's to create policies and procedures through a gang task force that will be led by a group of community members. We have people from probation, our sheriff's department, our local police department, our school districts, our superintendent will be on that, our city council. So really everyone's coming together to identify that the issues in our community with gang involved youth and the violence that's becoming more and more evident in our school systems. And then our second program that our teaching end will provide is the great program, which I'm sure many have at least heard of, the Gang Resistance Education and Training Program, to really provide that prevention in the elementary schools to try to, stop that gang involvement as they become older, because it is so prevalent in the neighborhoods these kids grow up on. So really trying to provide the intervention. We hope to serve, projected 20 to 50 youth per year, depending on accessibility, identification, things like that, and different variables. And then, so I think that kind of wraps up our program. I'm joined here with, like I said, Victor Community Support Services, Kelsey Baumstringer, who's our program manager who does our City of Marysville programs, and the executive director, Amy Redkin, for the Grass Valley and Marysville site. Is there anything you guys want to add?
It doesn't sound like it.
Definitely, it doesn't. They're probably have their phones on or something, but so that's our program in a nutshell, and we are really excited to really be able to start providing these needed services, even though it's just begun last year with all these great services, not just CalVIP, but all the services we're providing to these kiddos, so we're really excited.
Well, we're glad to have you. Thank you guys all for your presentations. I look forward to hearing from the last 11 tomorrow. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Elise will now present the data collection and evaluation responsibilities. Elise, did you want to take over?
All right, I think you should be seeing my slides if everything went according to plan.
I can see them.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everybody. My name is Elise Ram. I work in the research unit at the BSCC, and I'm going to be shifting your focus now to the evaluation responsibilities and requirements, as well as the data collection responsibilities for the CalVIP grant. So as I'm sure you're all aware, the CalVIP grantees are required to complete a local evaluation of your projects and to submit quarterly progress reports. Now, these requirements were included in your RFP as well as in the grantee contracts. The BSCC is currently in the process of contracting with our own outside evaluator who will be conducting the statewide outcome evaluation for this grant. Data for this evaluation is going to be collected through the quarterly progress reports, and additionally, the contractor will be responsible for developing the guidelines for each of your local evaluation plans and local evaluation reports. So because of that, a lot of what I'm going to be discussing today will be using samples as opposed to concrete instructions, because our evaluator, as I said, is not yet under contract, and they still need to develop a lot of those guidelines and quarterly progress report forms for you. So I want to start with a broad overview of what you can expect from the evaluator and about when you can expect it. So it's the evaluator's responsibility to conduct a thorough review of and to categorize all of the CalVIP projects. So using the results of that review, the evaluator will then refine their own research methods to ensure a thorough and complete local evaluation can be conducted by each of you. The evaluator will also be responsible for developing the guidelines for those local evaluation plans and the local evaluation reports, the guidelines for which will be available to you in February. They'll also be providing you with resources to help you with your evaluations throughout the grant cycle. They'll develop the quarterly progress report form, which will also be ready sometime in February. And the evaluator will provide a more in-depth orientation on all evaluation requirements for the grant. And finally, the evaluator will provide technical assistance throughout the grant cycle for both the local and your statewide evaluations. Now, as I said, because we're still in the process of contracting with this evaluator, they haven't even started to work on this stuff yet. So the focus of today's presentation is to give you a sense of what you'll likely receive from the evaluator so that it'll and hopefully enable you to at least begin working on your LEP and to start to plan for the type of data that you'll likely be asked to provide for your quarterly progress reports. Now, we know many of you are beginning to plan your evaluation and your data collection activities now. So we wanted to give you as many tools as we can at this point in the process, even though they might not be fully nailed down yet. Now, with all of that in mind, I'm going to keep this presentation pretty broad. So as I said, you'll get samples of key documents. These samples were drawn from materials that we've provided for other BSCC grants that require similar levels of evaluation and data collection. More information specific to this grant will be made available by the evaluator throughout the grant cycle. Now, for the local evaluation requirement, I'm going to provide general guidance for 2 documents that the BSCC requires you to submit. So I've already kind of mentioned them, the local evaluation plan, which we call the LEP, and the local evaluation report, which we call the LER. I'll also provide some guidance on the collection of race and ethnicity data throughout your project. I'll briefly review some evaluation resources that we've pulled together in the form of tips and suggestions that you might find beneficial when you're planning your evaluation as well as throughout your project in general. And afterward, we'll have some time to discuss any questions that you may have about your LEP and LER. Then finally, I'll wrap up by talking a little bit about the statewide evaluation, and I'll talk about a sample that we've provided for you of the program-wide quarterly progress report form, so you can get an idea of what that looks like and what the data that we're asking for will consist of. Now, before I get into more of the content, I want to do a quick review of the materials that we've provided for you on our website. They're located under the tab 4 section titled Evaluation. I'll go over most of these in more detail throughout the presentation, but I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of what we've got on our website and hopefully where it's at. So under that tab 4, you'll see first a PowerPoint presentation for this segment in a PDF format. So if you ever need to refer back to these slides, or if you prefer to go through them as opposed to watching them through the Zoom screen, you do have that option available to you. Some materials that we've also got some materials that will be helpful for the collection of race and ethnicity demographic data from your participants, which I will discuss in detail during this presentation. And then we've also provided some various evaluation resources that we've put together for your future reference. So we won't get super into detail on those, but there is some really good information in there. So I do encourage you to take a look through some of those documents and click through some of the links on our website. And finally, we've provided a sample of a Qpr form to, like I said, give you an idea of the type of data that we'll be asking for on those forms once our contractor has created them for you and finalized it. Now, just to make sure that everybody out there is still awake and listening, I'm going to ask you all to respond to this one. So hopefully everybody's there, everybody's awake. I want to ask you why evaluations are important. Why do you think that we require the evaluations throughout this whole process as opposed to letting you focus funding purely on your services? And anybody can answer. If you want to unmute, if you want to answer in chat, feel free.
Because we need to review our outcomes during the process. So if we need to make any corrections to make sure we, achieve our required goals, we don't wait till the end of the year and then too late.
Absolutely. So that's a process evaluation. It's an incredibly important piece. Anybody else have anything?
To advance the general knowledge of what works and what doesn't work for other agencies to use.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, that is one of the most important pieces of an evaluation. They help us make better funding decisions based on what worked, based on what didn't work. They add to the body of evidence for similar projects in that vein. Awesome. All right, anybody else want to do a shout out this morning?
It helps show the effectiveness of the program, and for at least legislators that might be funding it, it helps support their decisions on continuing the program and to show that the program is effective and worthwhile to continue funding.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Looks like I've got somebody drawing on my PowerPoint. I don't know how that happened.
Elise, you also have a couple chats. Do you want me to go ahead and tell you what they have to say about evaluation importance?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have to determine returns on investment in some cases, ensures effect and efficient evolution of interventions, to determine if the partnerships and processes are effective. It's a good starting point to review and pivot towards a direction in finding more success, to document and demonstrate our goal effectiveness, learn from mistakes, ours and others, to determine if the outcomes and processes are effective, to show that what we are doing is effective and or if it needs to be adjusted. It is a great way to tell the story of successes and challenges. And I believe I got them all.
Honestly?
Improves the quality measures. And it's a tool. And I think then I got it all now.
Thank you very much, Lean. I think you all nailed it. I had 3 items on my slide. I think you've all covered a pretty significant piece of all of them. I am very impressed with all of you and so very grateful that you recognize the importance of a strong evaluation, because that is, of course, how we tell if what you're doing works, and if it didn't work, we want to know why. It also gives us a little bit of accountability for how the funds were used. They show that they went toward achieving the outcomes that were in line with the grant, and they demonstrate to the public trust, which is where all of this funding comes from, what was actually achieved with the funding. Fantastic job, you all. Thank you. And ultimately, yeah, evaluations are what make it possible to demonstrate improvements and meaningful measures that show that the funding was used as intended. Now, getting a little bit more focused, it is, skipped a slide. It is important to have a quality LEP and an LER. Now, this is a piece of the evaluation. It's your local level evaluation, because a complete and quality LEP and LER show a complete and quality LEP and LER are how you'll communicate the effectiveness of your project. So even if the intended results weren't achieved, which totally happens and is not something to worry about or hide, as long as you tried your best to avoid that outcome, of course. This information is still beneficial, not only for project improvement, but also for others implementing their projects, which is what Anna was discussing earlier with the process evaluations, and just in general, understanding where your project is during implementation. Quality evaluations do start with a good plan so that you can use it as a roadmap. These plans should show what's involved in each of the steps needed to assess the outcomes of your project. They should focus on measurement and data collection to show that the results that are most meaningful and relevant to the project and the intent of the grant. And it's also good to note that before implementation, it's important to identify and define the measures and the measurement tools that you'll use to determine if the goals of the project were achieved. Because imagine attempting to write an evaluation report at the end of the cycle without having planned for specific outcome variable measurements in the beginning. So would the data that you want be available? Would it have been collected? Would the partners all agree on which outcome variables even need to be reported? So the quality of the plan will greatly impact the quality of that final report. And finally, having an evaluation plan is considered a best practice. So by planning for the evaluation and then implementing that plan throughout the project, you'll be more likely to collect and report meaningful and useful data to demonstrate your project's impact, which is why the BSCC requires this evaluation plan. We don't want you to to wait until the end of the grant cycle to start thinking about project evaluation, because by then it'll be way too late to make those significant and impactful changes. Now, in an ideal situation, everybody would be able to hire an outside evaluator in order to handle a bulk of the planning and compilation of data and data analysis. Now, there's a lot of benefits that come along with hiring an outside evaluator, such as that they possess evaluation expertise to assist you in the collaborative process of developing your LEP. They can guide the local evaluation throughout the project. They improve objectivity of your evaluation, and they can provide an additional resource just to handle a lot of that planning, data compilation, and data analysis, to take that off your plate so you can focus more on services. Now, we do recognize that not all of you have the capacity for an external evaluator in your budget, and that's completely fine. But if you can hire an external evaluator, or if you're considering hiring one but aren't sure yet, we do highly recommend that you do that hiring at an early stage so that they can help you create your LEP and provide assistance throughout the project as needed. Now, if anybody is interested in more information about working with an outside evaluator for your local evaluation, we've included a tips sheet that includes even more benefits and information about what an outside evaluator can bring to your project. Now, before I move on to our local evaluation plan section, do I have any questions about why we're having you do this evaluation, benefits of having an outside evaluator for the local evaluation level? I don't see any new stuff popping up in chat, so I will go ahead and keep going. Oh, and Katrina, yeah, Katrina did call out in chat. It's in tab 1, not tab 4. Apologies for the confusion on where stuff is.
No, Elise, I apologize. I was answering a question. Somebody asked for contact information for the fellow grantees. So tab 1 has the information on that. You are, I believe, in tab 4. So all your information is in tab 4.
Okay.
Multiple conversations going on. I apologize.
No worries. I shouldn't have been paying attention to that. There we go. All right, then I will go ahead and move on to our local evaluation plan. So the local evaluation plan, or LEP, is the first evaluation requirement that you'll be responsible for providing to the BSCC. So as described in the request for proposals, grantees are required to submit the LEP by Wednesday, March 31st, and that is the updated date. So that's the pushed back date from the original release of the RFP. Now, we know that this deadline is still a few months away. However, we want you to keep the evaluation in mind now, so that when that outside evaluator starts providing you with more, when our outside evaluator, pardon me, starts providing you with more specific instructions for writing your LEP, that you'll be as prepared as you can be. Now, at this time, I'll refer you to the second file that we've provided for you on our website under tab 4, called Sample LEP LER Guidelines. Now, this file provides the guidelines that we've given for past LEPs to assist you in creating the plan. Now, we're giving you this sample to help you show what an LEP has consisted of in the past. The main purpose of an LEP is to make sure that projects can be evaluated to determine their impact and effectiveness. So at its core, whatever the outside evaluator presents to you for your LEP guidelines should be along the same lines. So it may not be exactly what we've got here in this sample. So typically, at minimum, our LEPs consist of a cover page, a project background section in which the grantee just gives us information about what we need, information regarding what we need to understand the project, criteria for participant eligibility, and a description of goals and objectives that were included in the original project work plan. Now, generally, and this will be a blanket rule for your project as well, goals and objectives shouldn't really be changed or modified too much from the original work plan that you submitted to us in your application. Small minor tweaks and changes should be fine, but anything significant like replacing or removing or adding in a new goal should be run by Katrina before you make that change. So you'll have to have a conversation with her and I believe fill out a form in order to make that change official. But other than that, anything that you submit in your LEP should match with what you included in your application. We also have our grantees include an evaluation method and design for the process and the outcome evaluations. So they describe how they plan to evaluate their project processes and outcomes, definitions of the process and outcome variables, descriptions of the data that will be collected for those, criteria for determining participant success, and a strategy for determining whether the outcomes were due to the project and not due to some other outside factor. We do also have them create logic models, which you will again be asked to do this time around, and I'll discuss more momentarily. And then we'll have an appendices section where you can provide supplemental materials if necessary. So I'm going to cover this a few times throughout the presentation because it bears repeating. Everything that I just went over are sample guidelines from a past grant. So the LEP guidelines that you receive when you meet with the evaluator in February may be similar, but might be a little bit different from what I discussed here today. But bottom line is that at its core, whatever guidelines the evaluator presents, your LEP will always have the goal of ensuring your project evaluation will be able to show the outcomes of your project. So it shouldn't differ too much because the goal is always going to be that. But the guidelines themselves will probably look a little different and they might consist of some different instructions. All right, now the logic model. A project logic model is incredibly useful because it gives us a visual representation of your project. It shows the logical relationships between the inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts of your project. So in this case, our inputs are various resources that are available to support the project, so staff, materials, and funding. Activities are what the project then does with those inputs or the services that they provide in alignment with project goals. So if you have access to your inputs, then they can be used to accomplish your activities. The outputs are the number of services delivered and the products that you supply to participants if the activities are provided. The outcomes are the immediate, specific, and measurable changes due to the project. So if the outputs are achieved, then this is the change that we would expect to see in the participants. And finally, the impacts represent the change that you would expect to see in the community, the city, or the county if the outcomes are achieved. So these would include fundamental, intended, or unintended changes that occur in organizations or communities or systems because of the project activities. So impacts would typically be expected to be seen after the grant cycle has ended, and they usually take place on a much larger scale. The logic models, as I said, are great because they give us information in a way that is easy to read and to understand very quickly. But that being said, oops, I backed up a lot. There we go. That being said, logic models can be very complex, like this one. Now, this slide provides an example of another logic model that has a ton of information in it, but isn't actually very informative. Nobody could understand this model without spending a ton of time on it, and I'm sure whoever put this together had taken a ton of time to accumulate all of that information and get it mapped out into whatever this is supposed to be. However, we do encourage you to avoid making something at this level of complexity because even though this took a ton of time and has a lot of info in it, I would say that this version of a logic model is more useful and conveys more information than the bigger one. So when in doubt, we do ask you to stick to a simpler logic model. However, we don't have a prescribed template. If you have a logic model that you use that checks these 5 boxes of inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts, you are welcome to use whatever logic model that you currently employ for your project. But if you're looking for an example, we do provide these for you, and we'll work with our outside evaluator to hopefully get you something similar with their guidelines as well. Now, before I move on to our local evaluation report, do I have any questions about the LEP or logic model use? Okay. Not seeing anything new in chat, and I'm not seeing anybody look too panicked on the computer. So I will go ahead and move on to our local evaluation report. All right, so the Local Evaluation Report, or LER, is the second local evaluation requirement that you'll be responsible for providing to the BSCC. So it was mentioned in your grantee contracts that you're all required to submit the LER by December 31st of 2023. Now I'll refer you all to page 4 of the sample LEP guidelines document on the website. Starting on that 4th page, this document provides the guidelines for the LER that we've provided to our past grantees to assist them in the local evaluation reporting. Now, I'll review this at a much higher level since this isn't due for a couple of years, and also our outside evaluator might change the requirements for it in a little small ways. But be sure to keep the local evaluation report in mind and to consistently work on implementing the evaluation plan throughout the life of your project, just so that you can ensure a quality local evaluation can be done. So the main purpose of the LER is for you to document your results and to show us your project's overall impact. You'll build on the LEP by making adjustments like making it past tense, so changing it from we will do this to we did do this, as well as adding the final results and the discussion sections to show the impact of your project. The LEP will be used a lot during that process, so a good quality plan now will make it much easier to write your report later. It is important to note that if you said you would do something in your LEP, we would expect it to be covered in your LER. So even if something was supposed to happen but didn't, we would still want you to address that in that final report. Now, at a minimum, we've had our LERs include a cover page, an executive summary, which is just a general overview of all of the information that's included in the report, the project background again, the evaluation method and design for process and outcome evaluations again, the evaluation results section in which you'll actually describe the outcomes of the project, a discussion of those results in which you'll tell us how effective the project was and make recommendations with what should be done again and what should be done differently, and as well as an updated logic model. So if anything needed to be adjusted throughout the life of the project, you could update that in your logic model here. We've also in the past included a grantee highlight in which we allow our grantees to tell us about a success story from the project. So the story of a person that the project helped, or a significant hurdle that the project had to overcome. Just a way to show us the project's success that wasn't really captured by the local evaluation report or by the statewide evaluation. Now, again, this is all this information is a sample. Final versions will be provided in February by the evaluator. So keep this in mind as far as a general idea of what a local evaluation plan is and what a local evaluation report is, so that it's not so much of a vague concept. We wanted to give you something a little more concrete before just releasing you into the wild to wait for the evaluator to give you more specific details. Now, do I have any questions about the local evaluation report before I move on? The next part's the most exciting part of my presentation. Well, everything I've discussed up until now has involved samples to give you an idea of what might be asked of you during the evaluation process. What I'm going to discuss next is required by law and was developed by the BSCC board. So where everything before now has been vague and kind of unsure, this is concrete and locked in stone, because now we're getting into government codes. So exciting. So there are a couple of government codes that are related to the collection of race and ethnicity data that the BSCC and by extension the projects that it funds are required to follow. So I'm briefly going to review these so that you can keep them in mind when you're developing your data collection instruments to collect demographic data from your project participants. Now, the first code I need to go over is government code section 8310.5. This section mandates that this collection of data must include and report each major Asian group, including but not limited to Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, Korean, Vietnamese, Asian Indian, Laotian, and Cambodian. Also, each major Pacific Islander group has to be on there, so including but not limited to Hawaiian, Guamian, and Samoan. This code section was effective beginning January 1 of 2012. Therefore, this level of categorization will also be required for the QPR data collected. And we do encourage that you use this level of breakdown for your local evaluation of your project as well. Now, the second code that I've got to go over is 8310.9. This code section requires the reporting of individuals who identify with more than one ethnicity or race. So it requires that individuals have the option of selecting one or more ethnic or racial designations, and that these multiple designations are represented in any tabulated or reported race and ethnicity data. So this code section will be effective beginning January 1st of 2022, but you are all encouraged to comply as early as reasonably possible. And since this effective date falls in the middle of this grant cycle, this level of disaggregation is expected and should be reflected in the local evaluation of your project. So I would recommend using this level of disaggregation at the beginning, if at all possible, because you will be expected to show this level of disaggregation for your report. And at the end of the day, while this does potentially add some more work on our end and yours, this will help us honor the heritage of the participants by not forcing them to report in only one race or ethnicity category that they may or may not really identify with. So we hope that this in the long run will do some good. And in the event that you may need a form to help you collect race and ethnicity data from your participants in a way that's compliant with those two code sections, we have developed a form for you to use. So this form is available in your materials on the website and is labeled the Race and Ethnicity Form. We do also have this in Spanish if needed, so feel free to email us if you need the Spanish version of this form. Use of this form is completely optional, but we wanted to develop something just in case it was a handy tool for you to use. If you do choose to use it, they're for your own record keeping, so you don't need to send the completed forms to us at the BSCC. That being said, they should be used once per project participant. So even if a participant has multiple providers in your project, they don't have to fill out this form with every one of them. It would just be one time upon entry. Now, if a participant checks multiple boxes, they would be considered multiple ethnicities on the QPR or whatever that box ends up looking like in the final iteration of the QPR. Unfortunately, with the statewide evaluation level, we can't disaggregate our data to that fine level. So we do have to, unfortunately, put them in that multiple ethnicities box. Now, if you would like more detailed information about the collection of race and ethnicity data, we have also included on our website under tab 4 the BSCC's recommendation for the collection and reporting of juvenile race and ethnicity data, which is labeled AB 1998 in our files. It's a kind of long document that's filled with a lot of legalese information, but if you're looking for more detailed info as to why we decided to implement the use of this form to address the government codes and why the government codes themselves were used, that will give you all that information you're looking for. All right, now before I move on, do I have any questions about the government codes or about the use of this form? I do see a question in the chat. Can we get a copy of the presentation later for our coordinator? We are recording this this presentation today, so you will have the presentation itself available to you soon. And the slides, if that's all you're looking for, are available on our website under that tab 4. Okay, do I have any other questions regarding those government codes? See, this section's too exciting. It blows everybody
Excuse
away.
me, I do have a question.
Yes.
Hi. So
Hi.
this form here, since we're doing distance learning, is this something that we can send to our students and then we fill out or send to our program participants and we fill out digitally, or do you need a hard copy? Do you need this exact version?
Oh no, this is just a sample that we've provided for you to show you a way that's a way to collect the demographic data that satisfies those government codes. You do not have to use this form. We do only have it available. We've got the PDF, but I don't believe it's a fillable PDF, although I could probably make one. That wouldn't be very difficult. So if this is not an easy way for, if this isn't something that would be easy for you to use with the distance learning, and you have another way to collect the same data, that's totally fine.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? All right. Then let's talk a little bit about the LEP webinar. So I mentioned before multiple times that the outside evaluator that we're hiring for our statewide evaluation and for the monitoring of the local evaluation will be doing a LEP webinar to provide you with more information about the LEP guidelines. They'll be giving you information about the QPR later, but specifically the evaluator will be hosting an evaluation orientation that will dive into more detail regarding your LEP the week of February 22nd, most likely. So we don't for sure know that this is the week. It should be around this time. So just caveat that with it might change. Now you'll get more information about the exact date and time of the orientation from the evaluator as the state gets closer and once we have the evaluator fully under contract. But just keep that week in mind as far as when you'll be getting more information from them. Additionally, Katrina, as I said in the very beginning of my presentation, has uploaded some very useful documents to the CalVIP webpage covering the local evaluator roles and responsibilities, as well as some general data collection tips and helpful resources for your evaluators. In the interest of time today, I can't discuss these now in detail, but I do hope that you'll look them over in the near future as you're starting to plan your project evaluation. And in particular, I wanted to highlight this link. The link on this slide has been provided in the evaluation resources document on our website. It will take you to a page with links to program evaluation websites, evaluation articles, as well as publicly available data sets that you can potentially use for your local evaluation report. So please do at least take a look through some of those links. Those articles are incredibly useful, and especially those data sets if you're planning on doing some sort of comparison level of analysis for your final report. Those data sets can be very helpful.
Hey, Elise, we had somebody in private chat me that stated that you cut out when you were discussing about the February 2021 date. Can you just go back to that slide and maybe cover it just one more time?
This one?
Yeah.
Yes. So really quickly, just the evaluator will be hosting an evaluation orientation that will get into more detail for your LEP. We expect that it will take place during the week of February 22nd, and they'll give you more information about the exact date and time of the orientation from the evaluator as the date gets closer. But just until we get them under contract, we don't have the exact date nailed down yet. So keep the week of February 22nd in mind. It may change slightly depending on where the evaluator is in the development of the LEP guidelines and the QPR forms.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Elise, may I say something? Ron Soto from City of San Jose.
Absolutely.
One thing I've experienced, like with the Youth Reinvestment Grant, you have the same format, right? Local evaluation with state evaluation. That one thing I'd really encourage the providers of the service to think about is the statewide evaluation is pretty high level, and it's useful for state purposes at a very high level. So the local evaluation, though, we want to know a lot more related to dosage and other types of fidelity of our model and things like that. So that you might really start from there. I'd really encourage people to start from there because you could fill out state data, meet the requirements statewide and not really get what you want out of the local level. And that's not a criticism of the state level evaluation. It's just the nature of the beast. But I just wanted to encourage that because I had to struggle through that the information is not necessarily the same. It's very different in detail, units of service, things like that. So I just wanted to, because it sounds like, you know, if you wait to do that after the first year, you already lost a year's of data. And, you know, then you're in the second year and, you know, so you really got to get on it early. So I just want to mention that.
Absolutely. And that's kind of why we do both pieces of the evaluation, because statewide is fantastic when you want to see, okay, what are the general impacts of the grant? Was this successful? But at the end of the day, without that local level evaluation, you're missing a lot of good that the grant did. So we don't want to miss out on either piece of that. Okay. Any other questions before I move on to talk about the quarterly progress report and the statewide level evaluation? Okay. Now I'm going to switch over, like I said, talk about our quarterly progress reports. So I'm going to discuss why we use the QPRs. I'll talk a little about the sample QPR form that we've provided on our website. And then I'll discuss the technical assistance that will be available to you from the evaluator for the QPR. They'll be able to provide you technical assistance for the LEP as well, but the QPR, since it will be so much more consistent throughout the life of the project, will be a little bit more, you'll be probably using that a lot more. So the QPR itself is designed to collect the data that will be used for the statewide grant evaluation. So the form provides regular progress updates on your project's implementation so that Katrina can track the status of your projects, and also provides the data for the cumulative outcomes for all of the projects that are funded by the grant. So this form uses only aggregated participant data as well as outcome data. So participant privacy is maintained throughout the grant cycle and with each QPR submission. And at the end of the grant cycle, the evaluator will compile all of the QPR data that it used to create, it will compile all of the QPR data and use it to create a statewide picture that shows the impact of the grant funding as a whole. So like I said before, the local evaluation and the statewide evaluation are quite different from each other. They might sound a little similar on the surface, but they are getting two very different angles of the effect of this grant. So the QPR will ask you to provide quarterly updates on your grant spending, overall progress toward achieving your project goals, as well as progress toward achieving those objectives. It also gives us a snapshot of your progress implementing your inputs, descriptions of current project activities, outputs of those project activities, and general participant outcomes. So for the first QPR, you'll provide data for both quarters 1 and 2 combined. So your first QPR will be due May 15th of 2021. After that first one, each QPR will be due after the grant quarters. Now, I have got that sample of a QPR form to give you an idea of the type of data that may be requested in the QPR that will be developed by our outside evaluator. The sample is based on a QPR created for a statewide evaluation on a youth grant. So I've replaced the specific grant-related labels and terminology with more general terms and labels. So main takeaway from that is, as you go through the sample, if you do decide to look through it, don't get stuck on the labels that are in the form. We wanted to provide you something, again, just to give you a sense of what the QPR may look like and the type of data that it might collect. I do encourage you to look at it if you're beginning to plan your data collection efforts, because it will give you an idea of the type of process data to collect, as well as the level and the extent of data that will likely be needed to be collected for your participants, including the demographic variables and risk need information. But again, this form is just a sample, so it will change once our outside evaluator has been in contract and has had time to develop. Now, I did want to put together a list of important dates that you'll want to keep in mind during the coming weeks and months of this project. A copy of this has been posted on the BSCC website along with the other orientation materials. Mainly, I just wanted to give you an idea of the immediate stuff that's coming up. So when the guidelines are going to get finalized, approximately when that webinar is going to happen, the local evaluation plan that's due, and then from there, just all of the quarterly progress reports that will be due throughout the project. A similar table is available in the RFP, but this is one of those things that just bears repeating, especially since we had those evaluator dates that we could add into it. Going into our evaluator technical assistance. So for any of you who have questions or might need assistance as you complete your QPR forms, once those are available to you, we will provide more information about how technical assistance will be provided or can be requested once the QPR form is ready to be distributed. So again, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of the concrete details nailed down now. We'll answer and help you with as many questions as we can, but some things will just unfortunately have to wait until we get that evaluator fully under contract. All right. So if anybody has any general questions about the quarterly progress report form, I am happy to take those now. I'll answer what questions I can, but do keep in mind that I might not have specific answers because the details of the QPR will be available once that evaluator is under contract. So if anybody has QPR questions or even any other questions about the rest of the presentation from today, I am happy to help you now. So I'm gathering that everybody is super confident about everything that I discussed. I know that everything that I kind of talked about today was very vague, very broad because we don't have that evaluator under contract. But please do keep in mind that those government codes that I discussed today are set in stone. Do keep those in mind as you're developing your demographic collection methods. Thank you, Isaiah. We will keep you as in the loop as we can once we get that evaluator firmly under contract. And with that, I will thank all of you very much for your time and your patience today. I know that's a lot of semi-information that I had to share with you all. But I do encourage you to reach out to us if you have any weird questions before we get the evaluator under contract. And I look forward to learning more about all your grants. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Elise. I appreciate all the hard work that you put into that presentation. Our outside evaluator does have a representative on the call today. I know that he previously stated that he would pop in and say hello. Christian, would you like to just introduce yourself? And remember, they're not under contract, so they're not going to be answering any questions. But he did want to take the opportunity to introduce himself and say hello. Christian, I will allow you to say hello and introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had internet issues this morning and we were conked out. There was some sort of system outage in our neighborhood, so I was dialing it by phone. Happy to see everybody and thanks for letting me listen in. And yeah, as everybody said, we're not officially on board yet, but looking forward to getting started with everything. Yeah, more to come, I guess. We are, do you want me to say a little bit about our organization, or is
sure
we'll do that later? Yeah, so I'm with Social Policy Research Associates. We are an evaluation firm we're in Oakland, California, although of course these days a little bit more dispersed throughout the Bay Area as everybody works remotely. But we have been working in the criminal justice space for, let's see, going on about, well, I mean, solidly 10, 12 years, but even longer than that in some various capacities, and are excited to work with the BSCC. This is getting forward with this CalVIP grant. We do a lot of work around the state and nationally with federal, state, local agencies, working in a lot of reentry focused work, a lot of youth and adults in justice involved populations, and are currently working with or have worked with many of you in various capacities or in your areas, either with your organizations or with workforce boards or other agencies in your areas. So I'm excited to work more closely with each of you and do all the things that Elise just so nicely walked through. Great presentation in terms of just like spelling out all the, I think the really kind of things that we'll want to touch on. Just the logic model format is so important. So sticking to that theory of change. And so we'll be excited to get started with those things.
Thank you. Okay, now I will finish out the day. Just gotta get my slides. We're gonna go over administrative responsibilities. In this section, we'll talk about project staff, the grant agreement, the grantee agreement exhibits, prior approvals, and the grant administration guide. The project staff include the project director who has general administrative authority for implementing project activities and maintaining compliance. They are responsible for ensuring that project monies expended or obligated are for allowable cost, maintaining required documents of project activities and accomplishments, and signing project requests, reports, and modifications. The fiscal officer oversees the actual receipt and payment of grant monies and is responsible for maintaining proper accounting records and ensuring appropriate expenditures of grant funds. As stated yesterday, the fiscal officer must be someone other than the project director and cannot be the preparer of the financial invoices. Next, we have the day-to-day program and fiscal staff. Anytime BSCC has questions regarding your project, we generally reach out to the day-to-day contacts first. Communication between BSCC and each grantee is very important. So anytime there's an update to project staff, you will need to submit an updated contact sheet. The project contact sheet can be downloaded from the BSCC website, found in your virtual binder, or you can always email me or your assigned analyst and we can get you that form. Grant agreements, which are also known as standard agreements, contracts, or 213s, are fully executed only when signed by both the grantee and the BSCC director or designee. The term of the grant agreement is listed on the front page along with the grant number, the amount of your grant, and it also lists the exhibits that are attached. Projects must comply with the grant agreement as well as the grant admin guide. It is the direct grantee's responsibility for implementation and administration of the project and for providing all matching funds as specified in the grant budget. It is also the grantee's responsibility to ensure supplanting does not occur. BSCC grant funds are to be used to support new program activities or to augment existing funds and shall not be used to replace existing funds. The grantee must keep clear and detailed financial records to show that grant funds are used only for allowable costs and activities. I also want to mention that while we are currently accepting e-signatures due to the pandemic and working restrictions, we will eventually request that you send in a copy with a wet signature. Someone from the BSCC team will contact you as soon as we return from work. Obviously, none of us know when that's going to be, but once we do, we will contact you and request that you send us a copy of the contract with a wet signature. Also, this is a legal document and BSCC will hold grantees to the contract for the next 3 years. As the direct grantee, it's your responsibility to know and follow all the terms and conditions of the agreement. I want to bring your attention to the 2 dates that are mentioned in your contract. The grant agreement period, which is October 1st of 2020 to December 31st of 2023. Your financial evaluation report and fiscal audit report are both due at the end of the grant agreement period, which is December 31st. However, and this is important, the last date on which you can encumber funds related to project expenses is June 30th of 2023. So between July 1st and December 31st, you can only expend funds related to the financial audit and the final evaluation. So just to repeat, because it's very important, project-related expenses must be encumbered no later than June 30th. And between July 1st and December 31st, you can only expend funds related to the financial audit and the final evaluation. I'm going to stop periodically throughout the presentation. So this is the first time I'll stop and ask if anybody has any questions so far. Okay, we'll continue on. Exhibit A of the contract includes the scope of work, and you will find all the information related to the program requirements in this section, including report due dates. As Elise just went over, and I'll bring your attention to the highlighted section, your first quarterly project progress report is not due on February 15th. It will actually be due with the second progress report, which is May 15th. As mentioned, and as he introduced himself, we are working with an outside evaluator. So they will be developing the QPR guidelines, as well as the LEP and LER guidelines. We are hopeful to have the QPR guidelines to you in April, so you have plenty of time to prepare your progress report that is due May 15th. And although Elise did go over the requirements, remember that the outside evaluator will be holding a grantee orientation in February, and they will go over that information in greater detail. Conflict of interest is also covered under Exhibit A. I previously talked about the Executive Steering Committee yesterday that developed, read, and rated the proposals. Government Code Section 1090 prohibits financially interested individuals from participating in the ESC process. The individuals and their employers are prohibited from receiving grant funds, either as a direct grantee or as a sub-grantee. So please take a look at the names and organizations included on the roster and make sure that you don't get into a situation where grant funds could benefit those that are listed. If there is a conflict of interest with an ESC member, the board may revoke the grant award, and legal consequences could exist for the parties involved, including but not limited to repayment of the grant award. So I want to stress that it's very important that you know who the ESC members are and their employers, and that you do not subcontract with them. Exhibit B contains all of the information related to fiscal reporting. CalVIP grantees were given the option for quarterly or monthly invoicing. This slide just represents the quarterly invoicing dates, but gives you an idea of what this section looks like. Grantees should submit invoice to BSCC each invoicing period indicated in your specific grant agreement, even if the grant funds are not utilized during that invoice period. Supporting documentation must also be submitted for project expenditures. I know Stephanie did a really good job in going over that information yesterday. Grantees are required to maintain supporting documentation for all expenditures on the project site for the life of the grant and make them available for review during BSCC's site visits. Exhibit C contains 4 pages of general terms and conditions, including amendments, terminations for cause, independent contractors, and the non-discrimination clause. Exhibit D contains special terms and conditions, including grantees' general responsibilities, project access, accounting and audit requirements, modifications, and potential subcontractors. I do want to bring your attention to Section 3 of Exhibit D. If you use subcontractors for anything, including service delivery, evaluation, case management, you must adhere to these requirements. As previously mentioned, it is the grantee's responsibility to ensure subcontractors comply with the requirements of the grant agreement. So please review and know what those requirements are. As stated in Section 3C in the previous slide, grantees will ensure that all subcontractors comply with the eligibility requirements listed in the RFP and as described in Appendix B. Appendix B lists the criteria that non-governmental organizations must follow in order to receive funding from BSCC. Appendix B was an attachment that each grantee provided with their application, but please remember that anytime you add a NGO, you must update your Appendix B. One of the criteria within Appendix B is that the non-governmental organization be registered and in good standing with the California Secretary of State. The BSCC utilizes this site for grantees and recommend that you use it to ensure all sub-grantees are in good standing. So I want to pause because I know that that was a lot of information to go over and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, not hearing any.
We have a couple questions. One of them was from, let me see, Sudan, asking about something including an invoice. Not exactly sure what she's referring to. But we also have a question from two questions from Desiree Perry, asking if there's an estimated date of delivery for fully executed grant agreements. Do they have an estimated date of delivery? And then another with asking about if the funding is broken down by each year and any funds not expended during a particular year did not roll over. Is this the same for CalVIP, or is it a continuous grant?
Okay, so CalVIP is a continuous grant, so it's a 3-year cycle. And I apologize, I'm trying to keep up with the questions. The other question from Debbie referred to what again?
Katrina, there was one from Sue, and her answer or her question was answered by your invoicing slide.
Okay.
I think one was when you estimate agreements to be approved by the state.
Yeah, date of delivery.
Thank you. So every grantee is different. So there's a process that we go through and you have to provide specific information. Once the grantee has provided all of that information and signed their contract, then we send it to our deputy director for signature. And then it is sent back to the grantee fully executed. So I have been working with each of you in getting those completed. The main holdup right now that we're seeing are the resolutions. So once the resolution is received, generally we move forward. Debbie, does that answer your question?
I had another question. You mentioned the quarterly progress reports were due in May. Does that also include the invoices, or are invoices due February 15th?
So the invoices are still due in February. The quarterly progress report is due in the first 6 months of data, I guess I should say, are due in May due to the outside evaluator completing the QPR. Anybody else? Okay. So let's talk about information regarding prior approvals. Grantees must request prior approval for the listed items, even if the items were mentioned in the grant application. Grantees seeking approval to purchase food or beverages must submit a memo. However, it's not necessary to submit a memo for each individual purchase. Grantees can submit a memo that contains a list of purchases for the entire grant period. And although there is no memo format, the memo must include a description of the activities or program which the food or beverage will be purchased. the name of the subcontractor, if applicable, that will be purchasing the food or beverage, a description of the items that will be purchased along with corresponding costs. You must provide as much line item detail as possible to show the total cost. And an example of this can be found on page 26 in the grant admin guide. The memo should also include the number of grant funded participants that will benefit from the food and beverages and the justification for the purchase. Grantees must also submit a memo requesting approval to purchase participant support items and program incentives, which includes gift cards, stipends, field trips, excursions, etc. You can submit a memo that contains a list of purchases for the entire grant period. And please remember that no cash payments are allowed. You will need to follow any internal policies and procedures that exist for your purchase, documentation, and tracking of food, beverages, and program incentives. You must also comply with any applicable procurement rules, which can be found on page 33 of the grant admin guide. And BSCC can provide you with a tracking log template if you do not already have a way to track these items. I have sent it to a few of you, and it's also included in your virtual binder. Let's move on to vehicles. If vehicles are allowable pursuant to the terms of the program, you will need to provide substantial justification demonstrating the grant-related need. The justification must include the need for a vehicle, including the size of the service area and the need to provide services away from the office. The justification must include the lack of available agency vehicles, the lack of available personal vehicles for which mileage could be charged, or a reason why the agency will not allow the use of personal vehicles. It must also include a cost analysis for the vehicle purchase as compared to other options, including lease and personal vehicle use with mileage. Next, we'll talk about out-of-state travel. This is a big one. Out-of-state travel is generally restricted and only allowed in exceptional situations. If you are planning on traveling out of state, you must submit a separate written request on letterhead and receive written approval prior to incurring the expense. The written request must include a detailed justification and budget information. And please know that California does prohibit travel to states that have been found to have discriminatory laws by the Attorney General. A list of these states can be found on the website that is listed. And please know that BSCC will not reimburse for your travel to these states. If you travel out of state without receiving prior approval by BSCC, again, we are not obligated to reimburse you. Are there any questions about prior approvals?
So that would strictly be for grant funds and not match dollars, which you would require that prior approval, correct?
Helene, can you jump in? Because I'm not 100% certain on that.
You are correct. It is a good idea to keep Katrina in the loop of anything that you're doing with your match dollars, because it does contribute to the whole of your grant project, but you do not need to get prior approval for that because it is not grant dollars.
Thank you, Helene.
I have a question. What about in-state travel from like Southern California to Northern California? Do you need pre-approval for that?
I believe that you need pre-approval for any type of travel that includes state funds. Just the justification of where you're traveling and why.
We have a question from Manisha asking, does each item need a separate memo?
No, you can include everything in one memo, or everything that you know of at the time in one memo.
I have another question from Alondra asking, how long does it take to get approval?
Well, that can depend, but I try to be pretty attentive to when I get emails from you guys. I know sometimes, unfortunately, they do slip through the cracks, but I do try to be attentive and make sure that I get an answer to you guys as quick as I can. So hopefully not long, but I would request at least giving me, I would say 2 weeks if you're going out of state for travel. But I do try to be pretty attentive to your guys' emails.
We got one more question asking, does incentives include supportive services, i.e. work-ready documents or immediate needs?
Can you repeat that last part? Does it include?
Work includes supportive services. Example, work-ready documents or immediate needs.
Helene, again, will you take that one? I'm not 100% positive, and Helene's been here forever, so she is
Thanks a
willing
lot.
to assist me. Thank you, Helene.
And hello, everyone. I didn't even introduce myself. Yes, I am a field representative with the BSCC, and good to see some of the people that I have worked with in the past on some of my grants. So for the last question, it depends on what is all included in that, but yes, you do need to have some sort of matrix of your incentives, even if it's for supportive services, and just make sure Katrina knows those and what they are, and that you have a way of tracking them, especially during COVID when you may be needing to do some immediate things, but just keep her in the loop, but you will need to track them.
Thank you, Helene.
And then we have a question from Darren Branson asking just to confirm that no grant funding can be obligated until a fully executed agreement is provided by BSCC.
Correct.
All right, I think that's everything.
Okay. Let's talk about the grant admin guide. The grant admin guide is intended to help grantees comply with the terms and conditions of the project. I recommend that you read the grant admin guide and you utilize it as a resource throughout the grant period. Being a new field rep, I actually use the grant admin guide probably every day. Anytime that you guys ask me questions or cohort 2 ask me questions, I generally go right to the grant admin guide and do a little research and try to find the answer to the question. So you should refer to the grant admin guide whenever you have a question, as the answer to many common questions are included in the guide. If you cannot find the answer, please know that you can always contact me or your assigned analyst. I do rely on my colleagues, much as I did in the last few questions. So if you do have a question that you cannot find the answer to, please always know that you can contact us. I do want to take you guys to the grant admin guide so you can just kind of see where it's located. This is CPGP's homepage. The July 20 grant admin guide is found here. I did also send it out to the majority of the grantees at the beginning. And it's also included in your virtual binder. The guide was revised in July of 2020, and these sections were the sections that were revised. Not everything was revised within those sections. There might have just been portions of it. As you can see, section 5 was one of those. If you go to the table of contents, you can click on anything and it'll take you right to it. So let's go to the food and beverage. Here is the example I referred to on page 26 that kind of just gives you an example of what we would be looking for in your memo regarding the food and beverages. So this is actually a really handy guide. I have mine saved in PDF and I have a bunch of spots highlighted. So that is the grant admin guide. I also want to take you guys and show you just where the grantee virtual binder is. If you go here, I'll go back out here. Computer wants to be a little slow this morning. So if you go to the CPGP homepage, you can click on this section and it'll take you to all of our grants that we currently monitor. Maybe. And if you click CalVIP section, I apologize, my internet seems to want to be running a little slow today. And you go to grantee or cohort 3 grantees, you can see that the virtual binder is here. And hopefully by the end of this week, we will have the recordings of each day listed here as well. My computer is running super slow. There it is. So here are all the documentations that we've gone over or we will go over in the next day. Okay, I think that that concludes everything that I have. We will take some time to do some questions and answers. So does anybody have any questions?
Katrina, I did answer one in a chat, but I think it might be a good reiteration for everyone. In the fact that if you contract with a CBO and they provide incentives that could include food, and that you do need to ask for prior approval for that expenditure through your grant, who will then ask Katrina, because you need to follow the state dollars. So any of the things she went over, if your sub-grantees, if your subcontracting uses those things, then you as the grantee need to get prior approval from Katrina on any of those sub expenditures.
Perfect, thank you so much. Are there any other questions for either myself or Elise or Helene? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I don't see any in the chat. We finished 4 minutes early today, so I want to thank everybody for coming, and I will see you all tomorrow.